Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello again, my dear students. Okay, so last week we have covered travel graphs and we are done with that. So this week we are going to move on to a new topic, which is coordinate geometry. So coordinate geometry, we have already learned this in year 8, a little bit of it. But in year 9, we're going to have an expansion on coordinate geometry. So before we begin, let's look at our learning objective. So by the end of the lesson, you should be able to recognize parts of a coordinate geometry, recognize formula for midpoint, for distance and gradient, recognize the general equation of a straight line, which is the y equal to mx plus c, find the equation of a straight line given the gradient and y-intercept. So the steps to success for today are: pick any 2 points in the Cartesian plane and label it with either a cross or a shaded circle. Read the coordinates, join the points with a straight line, deriving the formula for gradient, deriving the formula for midpoint, deriving the formula for distance. And then you want to find the equation by substituting m, which is the gradient, and c, which is the y-intercept. So let's begin. So you've seen this sort of graph before, maybe in year 7, year 8, or could even be in year 6. But this graph is called a Cartesian plane. A Cartesian plane has a y-axis, which is this vertical axis, as well as the x-axis, which is the horizontal axis. Okay, so when you label a point on the Cartesian plane, you label it with either an x or a shaded circle. I prefer an X so that I do not cover other points in case I put the circle too big like that. Okay, so here I have labeled point A and point B. How do you find the coordinates of point A? So we look at the X. Where does it cross the x-axis? Where does this line meet the x-axis? Which is at 2. So we have 2. And then the same method for y, and we have the y coordinate. So the coordinate of A is 2, 2. So you do the same thing for B. You find the x coordinate, which is 4, and the y coordinate, which is 4 as well. So now you have point B. So the gradient of a line tells you how steep the line is. So the greater the gradient, the steeper it is. So let's say I have this line and the gradient is 1. So if it goes higher, it could be 1.5. Even higher, the gradient could be 2. So the gradient tells you how steep the line is. So when I calculate the gradient by using the formula here, which you have covered in year 8, so I'm going to substitute these coordinates, A and B, into this formula to get the gradient. Okay? So if you use this as x1, then you should also use this as y1. Y1. If you use this for x2, then you should also use this for y2. Okay? Now let's look at the y-intercept. Y-intercept is where the line crosses the y-axis. That's why it's called a y-intercept. So where it crosses the y-axis. So here the line crosses the y-axis at 0. So your y-intercept is 0. Okay. Distance, or also called as length, refers to the length of the line, obviously. So how do you get this? So if you see this line, if you joined it together, I'm just gonna join A and B. You have a right angle triangle. Remember, the hypotenuse of the right angle triangle, the length of the hypotenuse can be found using C square equals to A square plus B square. So you can use the same formula here to find the length. But we have summarized that for you and given you the formula of the length or the distance here. Okay, so you can just substitute again the A coordinate and the B coordinate into this formula to find the length from point A to point B on the line. Okay, obviously it doesn't tell you the length for the whole line. It just tells you the length from point A to point B. Alright? Okay, now let's find out how you can find the equation of line AB when you are given the gradient and the y-intercept. So the equation of a straight line has the formula y equals to mx plus c. So when you are given the gradient and the intercept, you just simply substitute it into this formula to get the equation of the line. So the gradient here is 1. You bring down the x, and the y-intercept is 0. So when you have 1 in front of an unknown, you can just leave it as x. And when you have plus 0, you don't have to write it. So the equation of line AB is just y equals to x. That's simple. Okay?